Testing 1, 2, 3. Damn it. There we go. All right. Hey tubers, I thought I would follow up my recent XSR900 review video with a video for some recommended mods. Some mods that I consider to be high value. I won't be going over exhausts. I think that's a little bit too subjective. Chances are if you're looking at this, you probably already picked out the one you want. So why don't we begin with what I think is probably the most important modification, having some form of protection on there. All right. Now, it's not the most fun topic, I know, but it's important. Okay? Nobody plans on going down, but it happens, and when it does, it sucks. If you watch the Revzilla recommendation modification video, they talked a bit about these things called Shogun frame sliders. Now, Shogun's an established brand name. The reviews speak for themselves. They're relatively cheap, and what they are these little polymer pegs that attach to the frame of your bike. In this case, it would have been here. And the idea is that if you do go down with them, it's going to keep, hopefully all, but most of your bike and the important bits from grinding against the pavement and keep it sliding. Now, you can get those off Revzilla for like $50 US, which is like 70 to 80 Canadian dollars. I had them, and you'll notice that I don't anymore because I had the experience of low siding recently on the left hand side. Fortunately for me, because I had them, it was pretty minor. It was a pretty minor low side to begin with, and the sliders kept most of my bike off the ground. Pretty much everything except for this thing right here. So this is a crankcase cover. It's the cover for the crankcase. Inside's the crankshaft and some engine oil. And in hindsight, it's a little bit obvious, but this thing protrudes from the bike quite a bit. And when it goes down, this is going to catch before the Shogun frame sliders. And if it's a minor thing, it's not going to be a big deal. It'll just kind of scuff up a bit, won't look so nice, and it's a relatively cheap part, like 80 Canadian dollars to just replace the case. That's the only issue. If you were going down a bit faster and that thing punctured, well, then that's going to leak oil and you won't be able to limp home. You'll have to call a tow. So since then, I opted for something a little bit more robust. These are engine guards. The brand name is Givi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, G-I-V-I. But these specifically go out of their way to protect more of the bike. These are a little bit more expensive. These are about 160 US, which puts it at like 212 Canadian on both sides. Now, I'm not going to try and say that this is in all ways better. No matter what anyone says, nothing out there is going to protect you from everything. But having something on there is dramatically better than having nothing at all. And having some form of protection is going to be the difference between, a couple $100s in repairs in an accident versus thousands upon thousands and having to use your insurance maybe. And that's no fun. So get something on there, anything at all. The cool thing with these is that I don't think it's their intended purpose, but I've tried it out, but these can kind of double up as forward controls. Yeah, you just put your feet right on here. I don't recommend you do it often, but it's fun once in a while. Okay. And once you've got that sorted, then you can start looking at the fun stuff. First thing that I recommend that you deal with are the mirror situation. So those stock mirrors are ugly. They make the bike look not as pretty as it should be. They look like little bug antennas. I couldn't wait to get rid of them. And bar end mirrors, they just make all bikes look better, but they really suit this make and model really well. I did a little bit of asking around and reading online, because you can get cheap ones just from anywhere really. They'll all play the part. But a lot of people were saying that they shake a lot once you get going and they fold in at highway speeds. So I went with the brand name ones on this one. So these are CRG lane splitters. You can save like a couple of bucks by going with the CRG hindsight. The difference is that the lane splitters have this extra joint right here. And I think the idea is that if you're actually lane splitting, and you hit something, these are going to fold in instead of snapping right off. Now for me, lane splitting isn't legal here and I wouldn't do it anyway, but this joint is actually pretty useful in getting the right angle for me. Like it helps me, it gives me like an extra pivot point to get the exact angle that I want, which is important. So once you get something like these on there, you're obviously going to be taking your stock mirrors off. And when you do, you're going to have where they mounted exposed, which would have been here and here. It's a little bit unsightly. I mean, a big part of why you're going to be doing this is because it makes it look nicer. So you want to cover those up. You can try. I had a hard time finding bolts to cover up those holes. I had a hard time finding those in my local hardware store. So eventually I found them off Amazon. I'll put the link for it below. They're a little bit expensive. They're like $16, but they give you an extra pair and they're black. So they do kind of look like, they do cover up that area pretty well. So, and also if you leave it exposed over time, like moisture and dust can get trapped in there. So I recommend you get something like this sooner rather than later. Now, like for me, this was mostly an aesthetic thing. I just wanted the bike to make it look nicer, but I was surprised to find what a massive functional upgrade it was as well. See, with the stock mirrors, like no matter what angle I played around with them at, it just, my arms always got caught in there and I could never really see all that well behind me, which is sort of an important thing to be able to do while you're riding a motorcycle. So when I got rid of those, I would say I could see like 10 times better with these things, like directly behind myself and in the adjacent lanes. And the thing that you might not anticipate is that not only do you see better behind yourself while you're riding, but your front view. I went over this a little bit in the actual review, but once you get rid of the stock mirrors, there's really like nothing obstructing your view when you're facing forward. I haven't ridden a lot of bikes where it's like that. And there's no fairings, the handlebars are relatively low, no windshield. It just, you look out into the open road and when you get going, it feels like you're flying. I love it. I would really recommend that you get rid of those stock mirrors, because this is a benefit that you reap every second that you're on the bike. Next up, we have what I consider to be the MVP mods. MVP because you can get so much out of this for so little. I wish I'd done this sooner, and that's going to be changing the grips. So I switched out my stock grips with these Builtwell recoil grips. They were like 20 bucks. And there wasn't anything wrong with the stock grips in terms of quality. I just found them to be a little bit thin. For me, I've always ridden bikes with thicker grips, and I find that it just makes the bike feel a little bit more substantial and that there's more power. And with the stock grips, I felt like the bike, it just felt dinky to me, and this is not a dinky bike. So when I switched these out, the feeling and improvement for my style was immediate. Now, I'm not trying to say like thicker grips are better than thinner grips. What I'm trying to say is that if you have a preference, or if you just want to upgrade into higher quality grips, you should do so early on, because you come into constant contact with this area of the bike, and anything that you change that you come into constant contact with is going to have an immediate and lasting effect on your riding experience, and that's essentially what you're after. But I'm telling you, like, if you haven't tried it before, really try these thicker grips. For me, I swear, I feel like I gained 10 horsepower and 5 pounds of torque. There's no science here. I'm just telling you how I feel. Because you can go out, you can drop like $2,000 on a full exhaust system, pick up maybe, oh, I don't know, like 5 horsepower, or you can spend $20, right, and feel like you've gained 10 and 5 pounds of torque. Okay? That's value. Just to reiterate, thick or thin, not advocating one or the other. You got a few extra bucks to spend. It would benefit you to spread them around here. Okay, that's pretty much it for things that actually go onto the bike or mount onto there. Like I said, I haven't done too much. I do have a couple other things I'll just go over quickly here. I have a cargo net. This is my only vehicle. I don't have a car. So not only do I think this thing looks cool, it's pretty useful at times when I go do groceries and whatnot, and I fill up my bag. I don't mind it actually helps when I can put a few extra things in there to take home. Also, I use it to lock up my helmet lock. Basically, when I arrive at a destination, I really dislike having to lug my helmet around, so I like locking it up against my bike to secure it. And what I would do is I'd take this, put it through the D-rings of the helmet, then lock it up here. And it's convenient for me to be able to hang this off my cargo net, so I don't have to, like, say, put it in the compartment, take off my seat every time. And I guess the other alternative would be to just put it in my pocket, but that means then I have to remember to take it out before I leave my home. So having a cargo net and a helmet lock is just generally useful, not specific to this bike, that I would also recommend. Final modification that I recommend isn't exactly a modification. It's just a really useful thing to have if you have this motorcycle, and that is called the snapjack. So I'll get into what this is in a second, but if you get this bike, it's got a chain, and if it has a chain, you have to maintain it regularly. So you got to wipe it down, lube it up every few hundred kilometers. Now, what you could do, the lowest tech solution, is to just kind of wipe down the chain and spray a bit of lube, roll it forward down your driveway or down the road a few inches, and do that on repeat for a very long time, every single time that you need to lube your chain. That's not practical. You're not going to be doing that. It's just, it's not realistic. What most people do is that they have this rear wheel stand, which is like a jack that attaches to, like, sometimes the swing arm of your bike or some spools if you have it. That works. The only issue is that that's typically a two-person job, just to, like, set the bike up and for someone else to lift it. I've known people that do it on their own, and I also know a lot of people that drop their bike trying to do that. So it comes to the point, if you want to do that properly, you have to coordinate with somebody, and that's a bit of, I don't know, that's a bit inconvenient at times. Honestly, the best solution is probably what Reszilla recommended, which was getting a center stand. SW Motec makes a good one. It's a bit of an extra weight that you lug around on your bike, but that's not so much the issue. It's a little bit expensive, like $300, $400 or something like that. I went with the cheap solution, which is the snapjack. So I saw this online, I saw reviews for it, and I was a little bit skeptical, you know, of how it worked. I'll show you how it works. So basically, you get this thing here, pull out the pin, right, and this spiky part fastens on the ground. You can do it on the pavement, and then this rubbery part here, right, that's gonna go on the side of your swing arm, underneath it somewhere. And you want to find a good spot, somewhere like here, right? Make sure it's fastened to the ground, and you have this bend. And what you want to do is push it in so that, there you go, right? And then you take this pin, put it in one of the holes to fasten it. Now you have the rear wheel off the ground, and you go to the other side, you wipe it down, and you lube up your chain, you do your thing. All without the help of somebody else, right? And without forking out a few $100 for the center stand. This thing is $50, and it's portable. So that's why I consider this to be high value. I wanted it to bring to your attention. It is a little bit sketchy, you know, but the reviews for it are pretty good. Like, this thing pushes the bike up against the kickstand, which is down on the other side. I'm not really a man of faith, except when I have to rely on that kickstand like I do when I do this maneuver. But so far, I've used this countless times, haven't had any issues, haven't had any tip overs. So far, so good. If you're getting this bike, or if you already have a bike that's chain driven and you're not using this, I would recommend it. Give it a shot. And that's it. That's pretty much all I have to recommend so far on modifications for the XSR900.